What is going on, Swoopers? Welcome back to another episode of Swoop Luke. I haven't done one of these episodes, me to the camera in a while because I've just been doing my AFL Evolution 2 videos, but we'll go back to regular scheduling. Let's roll the intro, jump straight into it. So in this episode, we'll be talking about, the hubs, what's going on with the 2020 season. On Instagram, I asked you to leave me a bunch of questions that I'm going to answer in regards to the hubs, in regards to the 2020 season, what it means, my opinion, all the news currently at 12:44 May the 3rd, all be up to date. Hopefully put it all into one sort of neat video so you can understand what's going on. So let's just fully get into it right now. So as you're all aware, the footy's been postponed since pretty much mid-March. We only had that round one game, no crowds, and then everything got postponed. COVID has just been taking over the world. Every single major sporting league has been either cancelled or postponed. There was talks that we could keep going, but the governments and stuff have since stopped flights, they've got border restrictions. There's no aeroplanes going unless you're an essential worker, and it's just been a crazy time to be alive. So there's been lots of talks about how the footy season will restart. We definitely know that there isn't going to be any crowds unless we play games in the Northern Territory, who seem to have very few cases at the moment. So I'm not sure if they're going to play games up in the Northern Territory. It has been touted as one of the, if we're looking at getting a hub sort of system, but every single state is being touted as a potential place for hubs, and it's just because the Northern Territory got 28 confirmed cases at the moment, and it's the lowest. They're saying it's the safest. Their chief minister came out and said from June 5 we'll be allowing crowds into sporting events. So it is really still all up in the air about what goes on, but I would assume that we won't be seeing crowds until maybe the finals in October, or probably 2021 until we finally see crowds again. Another big topic of discussion was these hubs. So there was the worst case scenario put up by the AFL to say that, players will be quarantined in hubs for 20 or so weeks without families. So they'll be staying in these hotels in one state. So for example, they'll be staying in these hubs in Queensland. That's all 800 players or however many players there are in the AFL system. So maybe I think they said about 36 players from each team or something ridiculous like that. So not even the whole 44 players from each team. But even then, that was absolute worst case scenario, and a lot of players came out and said that they don't want to be there because they want to be with their families. If they're not going to have their families, they're not going to play, they're going to stand down. There was talks of players standing down. Steel Sidewalder came out and said that he's got the birth of his first child in September. If this goes through to September, these quarantine hubs, he'll make the choice and not play at all. So I do think these hubs aren't going to go ahead. So that's absolutely the worst case scenario, and that only happens if COVID-19 amps up a little bit more. There's a second outbreak in the winter, or the borders between states don't open, so there's no charter flights and everyone just has to stay in that one sort of state. If that is the worst case scenario, if that does happen, I think that Queensland could be a possibility. There's been talks of Queensland being a possibility, but I do think that Victoria will be essential in this sort of hub space because we've got the MCG, we've got Etihad, we've got Geelong, the local ovals like Icon Park, Vic Park if they really wanted to, and there's 10 teams in Victoria as opposed to getting 18 teams all in one state like Queensland or something. You don't have to relocate the 10 Victorian teams. Is that Victorian bias? Not really. It's more of a pain in the ass to relocate 10 Victorian teams than 2 from WA, 2 from South Australia, 2 from Sydney, and stuff like that. There's been a lot of journalists that have come out and that say that they're pretty positive that these hubs aren't going to go ahead, which obviously that's best case. I'm talking about worst case, best case here. But yeah, but they've been saying that the hubs won't go ahead, and that pretty much is because of the COVID-19 results going down. I know Queensland will be opening up their borders for elite players. They've got the NRL resuming really soon. The New Zealand team is coming to Australia as well to stay here for the remainder of the NRL season until, borders are fully open. But like I said, Queensland have effectively come out and said that they'll be operating fly-in, fly-out models for elite sports, and I think that is what's going to work, and why we might see maybe hubs for 3, 4 or 5 weeks up in Queensland, but the fly-in, fly-out model, which would be the best case. So one of the best case scenario. Best case scenario is that COVID-19 goes away like that and we're able to resume play with crowds straight away, but that's definitely not going to happen. This is second best case scenario. So let's talk about when is the potential return date for the AFL. So last week, Scott Morrison had a national cabinet meeting, with all the state governments and premiers and stuff like that. And it's looking like this Friday coming up, they're going to be releasing some more guidelines, opening up Australia a little bit more. And this has a major effect on the AFL, because that could mean that at the moment, the AFL players are in a Stage A restriction, which means that the only 2 players can have a kick-to-kick. But if Stage B comes in next Friday, up to 10 players can have a kick-to-kick and start, training a little bit more. So that could mean that at clubs you have 4 groups, maybe, spread out throughout the day, training, and it's kind of getting to that bit where they can start amping up training a little bit more, going a little bit harder, because I assume it's really hard at home to do high intensity football training when you're by yourself or just with another player. Gillon McLaughlin also came out and said that he's pretty optimistic and confident that the AFL can resume in June, whether that's early June, late June, or mid-June. What has to happen is we have to get a block in of training, so maybe 2 or 3 weeks of high intensity training with the whole club. I think that mid-June is looking like the start date, and we can see round 2 finally take place. And if you're not aware already, there's only going to be 17 games in the season, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. So now I'm just going to jump onto my Instagram and answer as many questions as I can that you guys asked, and I'll give my opinion. So let's just do that now. So a lot of people just asking about the hubs and what's going on with those. I just answered that at the start of the question. If Footy does come back this season, when will it come back and how many rounds? So we know that it's going to be 17 rounds if it does come back. I definitely think it will come back. I'm sick of people talking about, just cancel the season and wait till next season when we have crowds. It's like, no, that's a little bit, selfish. Just play the season. I don't care if I'm not there for the next 2 years in a crowd, as long as I get to watch the football and the boys, everything that they've been training for the last 6 months to come out and play. I definitely want that. I don't want them to cancel the season this year, even if it's 17 rounds or whatever it is. I reckon just keep the game going. Someone said, would you agree with going into a hub? It's hard, like some players are single, or some players have 3 kids or baby on the way and a family, so it's just up to, if you want to go to the hub, it should be, if you want to go to the hub, you can go, you can play. If you don't want to go, then that's there's no one will hold that against you, but you don't get paid. Not that that's a sort of like a blackmail, it's just that if you're not going to do the work, you're not going to get paid. If I don't go to work for 8 weeks, I'm not going to get paid, so that's just the model that they should be working on. So now I'll ask for some questions about the 2020 season. So over here, who do you think would win the premiership in 2020 with a shorter season? I really, and this is not me being biased, I really do think the Pies are in with a chance this season. We showed it in round 1. We were on such a high. Some of the best football we've played in the last couple of years, and yes, I'm including 2018 when we did make a grand final, that we just put the doggies to the sword, and that would have been perfect momentum going into round 2 against the Tigers. But alas, we might have to show them in June that we can do the same thing. How many goals do you think Dakota will kick in 2020? Hard to tell. I wouldn't see him kicking less than 35 goals this season. That's if he plays predominantly forward, but he will be sharing his time in the midfield. How long do you think, this is a good one, how long do you think it will take the league to fully recover? So we know that the league borrowed a lot of money from the banks. I think it's going to take the league a couple of years to recover, especially that are borrowing money from the AFL or borrowing money from the banks that aren't self-sufficient. Like I'm talking Carlton, North Melbourne, St Kilda, Gold Coast. they're going to take a while because they rely on the match day tickets, the merchandise, the people, coming to the games and stuff like that. I think it's going to take 2 or 3 years to fully recover and for the AFL to be self-sustainable again. Not that they really were, but as sustainable as they once, were last year. The last thing I want to talk about is this asterisk premiership. I am sick to death of hearing that the person or the team that wins the premiership this year isn't going to be worthy. Are you kidding me? They're going to be more worthy than any other team has for the last 50 years. You're only playing 17 games, so that's 1 game against every single club. So that means that you're not going to, Richmond aren't going to verse Gold Coast twice, or a team, West Coast aren't going to verse a bottom team like, Adelaide twice, or something like that. So it's going to be as fair as it can be fixture-wise. And it's going to be harder to win the premiership, mainly because they had, 4 or 5 months worth of preseason training. They come back from round 1, G themselves up, and then it's like, okay, but now you can't play from March, April, May, June. So you're looking at 4 months without football and without proper training. So they've got to get their motivation from, themselves, from deep within, to then come back, build themselves up in a 3-week preseason, play games not in front of crowds, all the way through to October when we will be seeing the grand final again. I think that the team that wins the premiership this season, like I said, will be more deserving than any other team. You can put an asterisk in it, but I guarantee you that if Collingwood win the premiership, they're not going to put a fucking asterisk next to it. Okay, we'll have other teams saying, oh, you only won because there's 17 games. But if Richmond win it, we'll be saying the exact same thing. It's just jealousy. It's just hate. It's the team that wins it this year is going to be the most deserving in the last 50 years. But anyway, this has been my little quarantine hub rant 2020 season. What's going on? I'm just kind of getting back into the swing of things with these videos. So let me know your thoughts below, what you want to see me do a video on next. Also, leave all your thoughts on, what do you think will happen in the 2020 season about the hubs and just the premiers in general. But in the meantime, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shackers, I'll swoop you later. There's a whole thing about, because it's very rural, oh my god, I can't say this word, rural, fuck man.